Medical knowledge is, it doubles roughly every 73 days now. I mean, we know more about the human body today than ever before in history.
Yeah, the sheer volume of data is just staggering.
Right. But, preventable medical errors are still somehow a leading cause of death worldwide. Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. Today we are exploring Boris Kriger's 2025 book, Artificial Intelligence, The Reinvention of Healthcare.
And it is such a fascinating read.
It really is. And what is interesting is Kriger isn't a clinician himself. He is an independent systems thinker. So he is looking at the actual architecture of medicine, right? Trying to figure out why all this brilliant knowledge is just getting lost.
Exactly. And to fix that architecture, Kriger first diagnoses the exact failure point. He says healthcare isn't failing because of, a lack of funding or poorly trained doctors. It is failing because of what he calls structural discontinuity.
Structural discontinuity. So, I mean, it is basically a high-stakes game of telephone, right?
Yeah, that is a great way to put it. You come in with a really complex, lived experience of your symptoms. But as that gets handed off from the doctor's quick notes to the specialist and then to the pharmacy.
And then to you just trying to take the treatment at home, the rich details are just compressed and lost along the way.
Right, they just vanish.
Yeah.
And Kriger points out this structural discontinuity really comes down to the rigid limits of human cognition. Decades of cognitive science actually show that human working memory can only juggle about 4 chunks of information at any given time.
Wait, 4 chunks? So, if a patient walks in with a list of, say, 5 symptoms, a doctor looking at their chart is already cognitively overloaded before they even open their mouth.
They are, and that is before they even factor in medical history or, current medications, changing guidelines, patient preferences.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is literally an architectural flaw of the human mind. Doctors are simply operating at a scale and complexity the human brain just didn't evolve to handle.
I mean, if human working memory is biologically hardwired to max out at 4 chunks, we obviously can't just train our way out of this. We need a totally different structural architecture.
Which brings us to the core of the book, Kriger's clinical continuity principle. Because human brains can't overcome these limits, he argues we need a non-human mechanism to maintain continuous care.
So instead of disjointed PDF files and faxes, which we still use for some reason.
I know, right? It's wild. But Kriger envisions an AI layer that actively monitors your data across all specialists. It flags conflicts in real time before a doctor even writes a prescription.
Because it maintains a persistent memory that never forgets, right? It doesn't get fatigued and it cross-checks everything instantly. But I get the efficiency argument, but here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, the pushback.
Yeah, because healthcare is intensely personal. If I'm getting a difficult diagnosis, I do not want it outsourced to a chatbot. Doesn't this whole thing just strip the humanity out of medicine?
Well, what's fascinating here is Kriger's counterargument. He asserts the exact opposite, actually. Right now, doctors spend hours just staring at screens.
True, they are mostly typing while you try to talk to them.
Exactly. They are dealing with this massive cognitive burden of data management. The book argues that by letting AI shoulder that heavy lifting in the background, doctors actually reclaim the time and mental energy to look you in the eye.
So it creates the space for genuine empathy.
Precisely. It brings the human back into the room.
Okay, I see that. But Kriger isn't just a blind tech utopian, is he? The book seems pretty grounded about the reality of this.
Oh, absolutely. He dedicates a significant portion of the book to the serious risks of this new architecture. For instance, AI hallucinations.
Right, where a system might just confidently invent a completely non-existent medical fact. That is terrifying.
It is. And then there's algorithmic bias. The book highlights a real-world example where a widely used algorithm systematically underestimated the health needs of Black patients.
Wait, really? How does that even happen?
Well, the system used historical healthcare costs as a proxy to predict future illness. It is just much easier for a machine to quantify dollars spent than actual human suffering.
I see. But by using cost as a proxy, it completely ignored the historical lack of access to care that caused those lower costs in the first place.
Right. If the training data contains historical disparities, the AI will literally just automate and scale that inequality. Plus, to achieve this perfect clinical continuity, the AI needs access to your comprehensive, deeply sensitive data.
Which creates major privacy trade-offs that we really have to navigate carefully.
Definitely. It is a huge hurdle.
Well, this isn't just theoretical. The next time you sit in a doctor's office, Kriger's framework is a vital lens for understanding the imminent transformation of your own healthcare journey.
Exactly. The technology is already shifting the foundation of how care is delivered and tracked. It is moving us away from that fragmented game of telephone we talked about.
So consider this final thought as we wrap up our deep dive. If AI successfully takes over the massive cognitive burden of diagnosing and managing our medical data, will the definition of a brilliant doctor shift entirely away from technical memorization and purely toward emotional intelligence?